I love the environment in Last Train to Blue Moon Canyon. You're on an old train, and it's so cool, it makes me want to ride a passenger train in real life. And the train design is fantastic. Even though the five train cars are identical in terms of size and shape, they feel totally different. The placement of walls is used to great effect to make each train car feel unique. I'm comparing this to Murder on the Orient Express, a video game which came out the year after this one. Now, that game has a bunch of train cars, and every room is the exact same. There's no difference between them, and it's completely not fun to search the same room over and over and over again, dozens of times. It's really terrible. So, in comparison, this game, which came out earlier, is far superior. All the train cars are different. I love that. And I especially love how this game feels a lot bigger than any of the games which came before it. The premise of this game is that Nancy is in a mystery solving competition with a handful of other detectives. I like that premise, but it's not really a competition. It's more like Nancy solves a mystery while other detectives are around. Compared to Nancy tries to solve the mystery before the others do. It's still a better mystery competition than the Shattered Medallion, though. The other detectives include the Hardy Boys, and yes, all of my yes! Having the Hardy Boys as characters is great. It's fantastic that we finally get to see them. I like Joe's design, but I think Frank's vest looks silly. It looks like a life vest. So I love the Hardy Boys. I love the environment. I also like the premise too. The premise is great. I also like the introduction scene where Laurie explains who everybody is. This is a well done intro scene. The camera's continually moving, showing up the characters in the room from multiple angles. Laurie Gerard is a parody of Paris Hilton. I think this is the only time that the series has done a blatant parody of a celebrity. They've had characters that look like famous people, but not ones that act and are supposed to be that person. Uh, Lori is a spoiled rich girl who doesn't really care about anything but herself. She talks in an annoying, happy voice all the time, like a rejected Barbie character. She's clearly trying to beat Frank in the ugly vest competition, and the way she dismisses Nancy as not worth remembering makes me instantly hate her. John Gray is a super serious ghost chaser, at least in the opening where we get intense close-ups of him. He's rather friendly and laid back the rest of the game. I think John is the worst character of the game because he doesn't do anything. Everybody but him gets their own subplot. He's kind of related to one of Tino's subplots, but that's debatable. Charlena Purcell returns from Secret of the Shadow Ranch. I think she looked better in that game because she's got a hideous ponytail here. She looks and sounds mildly angry all the time in this game because you're interrupting her writing. In hindsight, maybe she wasn't the best choice for this game. Someone who doesn't care about the mystery at all makes for a poor detective competitor. Still, it was neat to see her, and I am amused at how she keeps writing on her laptop instead of listening to Laurie. Tino Balducci is my favorite character. He's the only detective competitor who's an actual detective. The opening has a slow zoom on his smirking face and his raised eyebrow. It's a cool shot which tells you about Tino's personality without any words. Tino steps in to be the hero here, only after everybody else has gone and no one needs his help anymore. That's Tino for you! Laurie explains Jake Hurley hid the location to his gold mine somewhere on this train, which is haunted by his wife Camille. The room goes black for a moment and Laurie disappears. Joe makes a joke about what do you do when your hostess is kidnapped? Nancy talks with Charlena, who says Laurie's disappearance is a publicity stunt. She openly admits she doesn't remember Nancy from 3 games ago. Ah, come on, Charlena. Joe interrupts. He and Frank will live here in the dining area. Joe saw Tino take a slug from the ground, and he mentions they work for ATAC, American Teens Against Crime. That's an undercover detective agency that Nancy should totally join. Seriously, I have no idea why she's not in ATAC already. She would be their top secret agent. She solves mysteries without even trying. Frank thinks Laurie faked her disappearance. You can choose which Hardy Boy to agree with. It doesn't affect the gameplay, but it's neat you have the option to pick one over the other. You get the same option to favor a Hardy Boy again when they tell you about burgers. Every train car in this game has gems and clues for the doll puzzle. This room has one of each. We've got a gemstone in the chandelier and doll shoes on the chair. By the exit is a phone that connects to the engineer. He's a surly fellow who refuses to talk to anyone besides Lori. I think they could have left the engineer out of the game entirely. He's not important. There's not much else here besides a locked furnace with a square and a duck on the lid. There's a steam valve. If you turn it on, it starts shaking and it leads to a game over sequence. You need to solve all pipe puzzles before you can turn it on safely. There are 4 pipe puzzles, one in each train car. Charlena gives you more information about Jake and Camille. She loved dancing, and he thought dancing lights outside the train were her ghost. You can see these lights outside the sleeper car. It's pretty creepy, but also really cool. I kind of like that special effect. Charlena says she has a gift for uncovering old information, which is something she never does in this game. I imagine that if the game didn't have the Hardy Boys, then Charlena would have filled their role as the person who investigates the engineer and finds the old poem for Nancy. The next train car is the sleeper car. It's the least interesting one. They probably could have left it out of the game because there's not much to do. 90% of the time I walk right through the sleeper car without looking at anything. In the corner is a simple 3x3 jigsaw puzzle. You need to swap and rotate the pieces to match the picture on top. This gives you a note which says, left pickaxe and lamp with Buell to open, lead is the key. I am minorly annoyed that Nancy points out it's lead, not lead. She gave away the solution to the puzzle. Maybe they should have left that line of dialogue out of senior mode while keeping it in junior mode. The sleeping car has 2 doll clues, a locked grate for the end of the game, and an elk head with a gem for an eyeball. It is creepy. That could be the creepiest thing in the game. That eyeball. Ugh. There's also an emergency brake. If you pull it, Nancy smashes her head against it. It's a game over sequence. That's a really painful way to die. That's kind of gruesome. Next is John's car. He says this used to belong to Camille. John is kind of snarky when talking about the other characters. Lori is tabloid trash. Charlena writes trash. And Tino is trash. I mean, Tino's under a lot of pressure. John explains the dancing lights are piezoelectricity. He uses big science words like that. I can't tell if he's making them up or not. He takes audio recordings, which could be a ghost, but it sounds like static to me. On the table is a simple game. You press the button to jump a hurdle. You do this 15 times in a row to get the sheet music for Camp Down races. I think this game looks cool and the song is neat, but 15 times in a row is a little bit much. Play the music on the piano here to get a spyglass. Because of John's audio stuff, you can't do this until the train arrives in Copper Gorge. The room has 4 different doll clues and a slug. There's a book about samplers, as well as a sampler that connects numbers to pictures, which is a sure sign we're getting a numbers puzzle later on. Oh, math. The next train car has Tino. He asks if you want to be a police detective, like him. He brags about the bank robbers he stopped, until Nancy points out that he only stopped them because he accidentally crashed into their car. It sounds like this happened in the parking lot at a fast food place, which is probably where Tino gets most of his meals. Tino says, "You heard wrong. People are lying about him because they're jealous. Jealous!" Tino gives you the slug as a gift from the Tino Balducci. Tino doesn't pick up on Nancy's sarcasm when she says, "Ooh, thank you." Like I said earlier, I find Tino to be extremely amusing. He is so self-centered, which hilariously contrasts with how useless he is. He's quick to insult the other characters. They're total hacks. Tino looks slimy. Not only his hair, but his shirt that needs to be buttoned. Nobody wants to see your chest, Tino. But he's at least kind of nice. His goodbye phrase is, "Helping people's what I'm all about." I think he actually means it, so he's somewhat nice. I don't know, he doesn't mean it when it comes to investigating Lori's disappearance. He's just sitting around doing nothing, waiting for somebody else to find Lori. Come to think of it, nobody is actually looking for Lori besides Nancy. If Nancy wasn't here, Lori would be lost forever. There are 2 doll clues and 2 gemstones, as well as a book on gemstones. That's helpful because I have no idea what gemstones are. There's a locked cigar box with AG on it and a periodic table of the elements for people who don't have scientific names memorized. That's also helpful. I came here to solve mysteries, not take a science test. The car has the only set of pipes that you can reach without solving a puzzle first. You want to turn them so they all connect. It's a simple puzzle. On the far side of the car is the scale. It has the same pictures that are in the sampler. For example, the exit to this room has a picture of cherries, which is 10. You have a 7 slug and a 3 slug. 7 plus 3 equals 10. So put both the 7 and 3 on the same pan to unlock the door. I have no idea how Lori got through this door without the slugs. Even if she had the slugs, she'd probably get stuck on the puzzle of what is 7 plus 3? Yeah, that's too complicated for her to solve. So I'm guessing that the door automatically locked itself behind her somehow. There's another layer to the scales puzzle. You have to take the number of slugs into account. In this case, it means you have to get 7 with 1 slug and 10 with 2 slugs. It's not an issue this time around. You only have 2 slugs to choose from, so there's a 50% chance of you getting the correct slug on the first try and not even noticing that the order matters. I don't think there's a name for the next train car. I guess the machine room is as good of a name as any, since it's got maps and many machines. On the right side is a dresser with several drawers. One drawer has a false bottom, which hides designs for the fancy machine. This lets Nancy know she has to collect gemstones, a spyglass, a pickaxe, and a lamp. The dresser also has a doll clue, a slug, and a paper that has silver listed with 7 colors. Silver is AG on the periodic table, so you go to the AG cigar box and click on the 6 colors in order. You get a color wheel, the dance steps for Hurley's Whirly Burly, which is a cute name for a dance, and a letter about acetylene carbide. The carbide stuff is such a minor puzzle, they easily could have left it out of the game. What you do is you get carbide from behind Tino, and you use it on the lantern. It's simple, that's the entire puzzle. I think the main point of the carbide stuff was to show off the fact that Jake has a letter from the inventor, Thomas Wilson. It's foreshadowing for the end of the game, but I honestly had no idea who Thomas Wilson was, so I completely missed the implication that Jake had a famous pen pal. The door at the end of the machine room is locked with the same puzzle from the final scene. You have to press all 9 buttons in the correct order, and the order is random. The only difference between these puzzles is that the buttons look kind of different in this version. It's an okay puzzle. I think it would have been better with, say, like 6 buttons to press. That would make it easier, and it would be less obvious that the puzzle's being reused from the final scene. I think, the puzzle is the same on both modes, right? So maybe on junior mode, they could have like 6 buttons, and senior mode, 9 buttons. I don't know, I'm just making things up at this point. The final train car is the caboose, which is the most interesting train car to look at in my opinion. It's got a photograph and fancy wall designs. It's also got Lori Gerard. Lori explains she faked her kidnapping to give everybody a fun mystery to solve. As a reward for finding her, Lori gives Nancy a long letter from Jake, which Nancy reads out loud. Poor Nancy, that's a long letter to read. The letter explains all the clues for this game's scavenger hunt. I personally prefer the journal from the previous game because it was a more interesting look at. It had cool pictures with the clues. But this list of clues stays in Nancy's inventory the entire time, so you can check it whenever you want. That is way more helpful. Lori indicates she tried solving the puzzles on her own, but she got confused and stopped immediately. Lori would probably hate playing the Nancy Drew games. Instead of solving the puzzle herself, she decided to throw this mystery party, which is admittedly way more fun. Lori says she doesn't know John, but his TV show is neat. She loves Charlena's romance novels, but when she sent Charlena some ideas for new books, Charlena hated them. We never get told what Lori's book ideas are, but I have to imagine they all starred her as the main character. And the love interest was Tino. She just loves Tino's eyes, and there's a minor back and forth between Tino and Lori. Nancy learns they used to be a couple. Tino broke up with her because of pressure from his friends. He stopped calling, but he didn't stop caring. Ooh, I love that line! If Charlena's romances are half as good as that, I want to read her romance novels. No, but seriously, it would be awesome if we could at least see a couple of pages of a Charlena Purcell romance. That would have been a nice thing to just throw in the game somewhere. Tino thinks things over. He decides to get back together with Lori. Aww. Does this have anything to do with the mystery? No, no, nothing at all. But it's still a fun little subplot that I enjoy. At least it gives us a reason to talk to Tino and Lori more than once. The Tino Lori romance is one of a few optional subplots in this game. I like all of them. The subplots do a great job of making the characters come alive and making them seem important. The truth is, none of them are relevant to Jake's mystery. None of them were even alive when Jake died, and they don't help you decipher any of Jake's clues. If Nancy was alone on the train, the mystery would basically play out the exact same way. So it's good we have stuff like Lori's fake kidnapping, because it brings the characters into the story. Also, first-time players are going to be doing a lot of back and forth among the train cars, looking for gems and doll clues. It's good that there's new stuff to see and talk about when you're revisiting these old locations. Now, the letter says Nancy has to do Jake's dance on the dance floor in the caboose. That's a surprisingly difficult puzzle. You need to move Nancy's feet to the proper positions. It's only 10 steps, but you can't check the instructions partway through. Every time you check the instructions, you have to start over from the beginning again. You almost have to write the instructions down on a separate piece of paper to get through this puzzle. It's kind of a pain, but the puzzle is pretty unique, and the fact that you have to alternate left and right feet makes it more manageable, so I'm okay with this puzzle, even though normally I would hate a puzzle that requires you to memorize 10 steps. Doing the dance gives you gemstones and unlocks the doll collection. Oh my gosh, the dolls. So they are super creepy. They are the creepiest things in this game. I know I said that about that elk gemstone eye, but yeah, no, the dolls are the creepiest thing. Definitely. There are 11 dolls. You need to use the clues throughout the train cars to identify all of the dolls, and then you sort them by their initials. And yeah, this puzzle's way too much work for me. I solved it once, but every other time I play this game, I look up the solution because I cannot be bothered with this. It would help if Nancy wrote down the doll clues in her notebook, but she doesn't. You have to do this on your own, pretty much on a separate piece of paper. Jake's letter says you sort the dolls by the maker of the ballet shoes, only the shoes are worn out. Nancy has to take a picture of the shoes with her photo camera. The camera replaces the internet button on Nancy's phone, and I'm fine with this. I'm fine with not having the internet searching stuff anymore. It wasn't that great of a feature. Not that the ability to send photos is all that fantastic of a replacement. It only shows up in this game, and this is the only photo that Nancy takes. Eventually, Nancy's going to get a cool camera phone upgrade, but not in this game. This is just a one-time only thing, which honestly could have been left out. Nancy could have identified the shoes by taking them to Charlena. If the game had had that as the puzzle rather than the photo phone, it would have worked just as well. Nancy sends the picture of the ballet shoes to Bess and George. The cousins are painting Bess's room today. They're excited to hear about Nancy's adventures with famous people. Yeah, I think Bess and George are pretty fun in this game. Although, we have the Hardy Boys right here. I'm sorry, Bess and George, but the Hardys are right there. I want to talk to them instead. Bess and George both think that Lori's kidnapping is fake because she has faked kidnappings in the past. I am honestly surprised none of the other characters mention that. That seems like extremely relevant information. The cousins research the shoes. You call them back later to learn that the name is Chassut Chatoyan. You spell that out with the dolls to get a 4 slug and a 1 slug. You also get a random paper you can look at. I don't know why the paper's there. In the corner of the caboose is a trunk with a special wrench. It opens up the grate in John's car. I believe you have to look at the grate before you can take the wrench. John's grate is a 2-part puzzle. First, you need to undo the 8 screws. It's the standard puzzle where you move one piece into place and other pieces move. You have to figure out the correct order to move the screws, or you could just guess. It's honestly not that bad. You can probably just guess your way to this puzzle solution. The pipes behind the grate are different colors, and this is the most difficult set of pipes, because when you click on a blue pipe, it moves all the blue pipes and all the red pipes. So you have to get all the blue pipes into place first, then all the red pipes into place, and then the green pipes. Now, I do like how there's variation with the pipe puzzles, because it would have been super boring just to solve the same 4 pipe puzzles over and over and over again. But I I think they should have swapped this one with the one that's in the sleeper car. That way the pipe puzzles are getting harder and harder as you go throughout the game. That makes more sense than having the hardest pipe puzzle second, you know? I don't know, just a minor point I wanted to make. In the other corner of the caboose is a grid with letters. You want to spell out the names of the cities that are in Jake's letter. I really like this puzzle. It's pretty unique, and it must have taken a ton of careful planning to make sure you can only spell out the city names in a particular order. I kind of wish we had a puzzle like this appear in another Nancy Drew game. When you solve the puzzle, you get the letters N, V, R, Z, T, B, A, A. You enter that into a box on the machine car in order to get the map. Hooray! You can talk to all the other characters about finding Lori. John's surprised because he got dangerous vibes off of her, and his vibes are never wrong. The bad vibes must be about Nancy. John is so good at science, you guys. The Hardys are better at reading vibes because they can tell Nancy found Lori just by looking at Nancy's big smile. Oh, the Hardys love Nancy's beautiful smile. Ooh, romance. Joe complains that Nancy's doing all the work and she doesn't need their help. True. You can zoom in on the table leg near the Hardys to find the hidden button that Lori used to fake her kidnapping. That's a neat thing for them to include in this game, but it's so small it's easy to overlook. I have to imagine most players never found the button. I know there's a button to find in this room, and it still takes me a while to find it. It's difficult. Charlena offers paltry congratulations to Nancy, but she doesn't seem to care that Lori is safe. She dismisses the thought of Lori becoming a romance novelist, but the Hardys overhear a fight between Charlena and Lori. Joe says it was an amazing fight with lots of screaming. Wow, I can't believe Charlena even knows how to scream. It's so unlike her to raise her voice at anyone. Charlena confesses she stole one of Lori's story ideas without compensating her for it. I find it weird that Charlena says, I'm not going to admit anything. You just admitted everything. The storyline ends there, which is a shame. We should at least be able to talk to Lori about what happened. Lori would have something interesting to say about Charlena totally ripping her off, right? Now, the other optional subplot in this game is the emergency brake. When you're in the machine room, somebody pulls the brake, almost killing everybody on the train. We don't know who did it or why. Lori and Joe both think Camille's ghost did it, and it's weird how they're more willing to blame a ghost than the actual ghost hunter. Tino claims he found John's thermometer at the crime scene. He says John's show is about to be cancelled, so he's desperate for publicity. That's not much of a motive. I'm not sure how much publicity he'd get from being on a train that stopped in the middle of nowhere, but honestly, I did not expect Tino to come up with a plausible explanation. John admits he lost a thermometer and his show was cancelled, but another network quickly picked it up, so he's okay. Nancy solves the mystery when she sees John's packing peanuts on the ground near Tino. Tino stole the thermometer in order to frame John, and he's such an idiot he didn't even try to hide the evidence. Tino gives a pretty weak apology. Maybe I was a little hasty. Maybe I shouldn't frame people for my own crimes. Maybe I shouldn't have risked everyone's lives just to make myself look better. And maybe I apologize. Maybe? Give me a break, Tino! Amazingly, though, Tino gets away with pulling the emergency brake. He gets a free pass for his bad behavior, and it never gets mentioned again. I wish there was some reference to Tino getting his comeuppance in the ending scenes, because it feels like Tino should do more than maybe apologize. I do like the emergency brake subplot. It's a neat mini-mystery. I just dislike the resolution to it, where Tino escapes unpunished and gets rewarded with a cameo in White Wolf of Icicle Creek. Once you get the slugs from the doll puzzle, you can use the scales again. The square and the duck are 4 and 1, respectively. This is a harder version of the puzzle. You have to use subtraction to get those numbers. And you have to take the number of slugs into account. So you have to get 4 using only 3 of the numbers. That's kind of tricky, because you've got 5 different numbers to choose from. But going from 4 to 1 is simple. You just slap the 3 slug on the left pan. When you light up the square and the duck on the scales, the stove in the dining room is opened. Inside is a letter which says the engineer was James Thurston. The Hardy Boys promise to research him. You have to leave and come back later. When you ask, hey, did you guys find anything? They say Thurston had a family in Copper Gorge. I like to think of this as the halfway point of the game. We get a nice travel montage, and the train ride comes to an end. So now we've got new places to explore, and that's part of the reason why this game feels so big. Halfway through, we have a new town to go through, complete with its own map. The train feels pretty different too. Even though it's 90% the same, it just feels different, once it stops moving. And that helps the game feel bigger. I'm glad they included the Copper Gorge area. The one area in Copper Gorge is the crypt. The Crypt Keeper is the creepiest thing in the game. I know I said that about the dolls, but no, it's the Crypt Keeper. He's the creepiest thing in the game. He whispers in a strange voice, and he chuckles that you're never alone when you're in the crypt. It's just so creepy and bizarre. I remember this Crypt Keeper guy really well, even though we never see what he looks like, and he only appears in this brief scene. The Crypt Keeper says the key's stuck in the drain. Nancy needs something long and sticky to get it out. Ooh, I know. What about a magic wand with bubble gum on the end? Oh, wait, no. That was Nancy drew the final scene. In this game, Nancy needs taffy, so she goes to the other location in town, the Historical Museum and Taffy Shop, run by Fatima. She wears a giant cowboy costume. Fatima is kind of on the borderline between creepy and entertaining. She's kind of creepy, that weird costume, but she's funny. I love how over the top she is about everything. Hot dang, she's fun. So I'd say she's more entertaining than creepy. She explains Buell was her great uncle who ran a pawn shop here. She has lots of his artifacts, but you can't touch them. The taffy's free, but first you need to play games to win tokens, just like the Haunted Carousel. I'm not a huge fan of the games here. They're mostly based on random luck, like the horse race. Pick a horse. There's a 1 in 5 chance of your horse winning. There's no strategy, you just have to get lucky. Thanks, game. The other game is Pachinko. You want the miner to reach the top of the mountain before the Yeti does. You shoot a bunch of Pachinko balls onto the screen and you watch them bounce around. There are 4 spaces they can land in. They'll either help or hurt one of the characters. This is slightly more strategy involved because you can kind of control where the balls land, but not really. The Yeti moves faster than the miner, so in order to win, you need to get at least 3 good landings. The graphics for this puzzle are neat, and the sound effects are great. They make the puzzle more entertaining. In fact, I would say I'd rather play Pachinko here than in Shadow at the Water's Edge. This version of Pachinko was more entertaining to me. Playing the games gives you taffy. You use it to get the key to the crypt. The crypt has a slug on the left side, and if you look at the designs in the corners, Nancy notes she has to take rubbings here. She has a pencil for this. She started the game with a pencil in her inventory. I think this is the first time that's happened. Normally, you have to pick up an item before you use it. It's a little weird that Nancy has an item which goes completely ignored until this point in the game. And even weirder, she doesn't have any paper. Why is Nancy carrying a pencil without paper? What's she planning to use the pencil on? I don't know, this just makes me think that the pencil was originally going to be used for something else in this game. There's also the fact that Nancy has her journal where she writes her case notes and her task list. That doesn't count as paper? Her case notes are in black, so it could be written in pencil or pen, but she underlines some things in red, which indicates she's got a second writing instrument that we don't see. I know, I'm overthinking this, but it's weird, and it's probably why we don't have any puzzles about pencils in other Nancy Drew games. Also in the crypt is a stained glass window which shows the color wheel solutions. Camille's coffin has copper written on it, so press all the copper colors for a gemstone. One of the trunks in Fatima's store has Jake's insignia on the lid. Ask Fatima and she'll let you open it if you take her to meet Charlena. Nancy negotiates with Fatima and convinces her to accept an autograph instead. Wow! Nancy's negotiation skills are impressive here, especially since she normally does whatever anyone tells her to, no questions asked. I wish Nancy negotiated with other people more often, instead of passively accepting every unreasonable request that comes her way. She's apparently great at negotiation. Charlena agrees to give Fatima an autographed picture. She has pictures, but no pen. So she has the thing to write on, but not the thing to write with. It's like the opposite of Nancy's pencil problem. Tino has a pen, he'll give it to you if you beat his high score at leaping lizards. This game is basically Chinese checkers. It's a neat challenge. You want to end up with 4 or less lizards, which isn't too hard. Tino says, talk about lucky. I think he's just mad that you're smarter than him. Charlena signs the picture of herself, and we get to see this picture. It's kind of hideous. She's not smiling at all. I would not carry a stack of those photos around with me. The picture has her wearing a different necklace and no flower, which means Charlena is the only character in this game who changes their clothes. When you return to Fatima's, the Hardy Boys enter. They got a lead, mainly because Joe stopped to get a cheeseburger. I love how proud Joe is here, like it's the best clue ever. I especially love how he corrects Nancy by saying it's a cheeseburger, not a normal burger. It's a hilarious close-up, probably my favorite moment of the game. Frank explains they found James Thurston's grandson at a diner. The owner is forcing Frank to serve as a short order cook there, which is great. He can get Joe a cheeseburger. The Hardys say Balducci and the others have left the train for a bit, so it's a good time to poke around, but not really. You can get the gemstone from the cougar on Tino's table, and that's about it. It's not like you can snoop through Laurie's things or John's things. I guess you can do the piano puzzle now that John's gone, but you don't have to. You could do it when he's there just as easily now. Nancy gives the signed photo to Fatima, who hangs it up on a wall. Ah, that's cute. Open Jake's trunk with the colors for lead. Inside is a lamp and a slug, but no pickaxe. She asks Fatima about the missing pickaxe, and Fatima says, well, they keep it in the back for opening coconuts. Again, Nancy is good at negotiating with Fatima. She can argue that Fatima owes her a favor, or she can appeal to Fatima's great-great-uncle. Either way, Fatima gives in and agrees to let you have the pickaxe after you sort some taffy. The taffy room is in the back. Nancy can take wax paper here for the rubbings in Camille's crypt. You match the pictures on the rubbings with the sampler book and the sampler in John's car. That gives you numbers to open up the grate in the sleeping car. The combination is 7963. And the pipes here are green and red. All the red pipes move together, while the greens move separately. As for the last set of pipes, they're behind the eagle picture, which is by the Hardy Boys. You unlock it with the scales. The eagle is 2, and it's the 6th picture, so you need to use 6 slugs to get a total of 2. There are multiple solutions. I think. There have to be multiple solutions, right? It would be cruel if the game forced you to find slugs which you don't actually need to solve the puzzle. Either way, I'm glad you only have to get the eagle. Unlike the other 2 scales puzzles, you had to get the square and the duck, you had to get the owl and cherries. I was expecting we'd have to get the bell and the eagle, but no, you just have to get the eagle. You don't have to get the bell, and that's good. That's a good relief. The pipes behind the eagle are just like the ones in John's car. At this point, you should have finished all 4 pipe puzzles, so you can turn on the steam to the machine room. Back to sorting taffy. This is great. This was a legitimately fun challenge. It's so fun, it doesn't feel like a chore. I like it. I kind of wish we got to do it, multiple times. As opposed to, say, doing the pipe puzzle multiple times. You have to sort 25 pieces. While making less than 3 errors, you move the pieces from the conveyor belt to the 6 bins, and you ignore the rejected pieces. It's just a fun challenge. I like it. Fatima gives you the pickaxe and warns you the handle's almost broken, and when you leave Fatima's, Frank calls Nancy. So we have Frank's hamburger challenge. Joe is going to be so jealous when he hears that Frank made 4 burgers. I also like this challenge. It's great. It's a simple variation on the cooking challenges from Danger on Deception Island and Curse of Blackmar Manor, where there's just a bunch of different ingredients on the table in front of you. You need to make a burger with the correct ingredients. They're listed on the order form. One burger is use all ingredients that don't start with the letter P, which is a weird request. In fact, the premise for the burger challenge is flat out weird. The old timer used to work in a mine. Whenever Frank rings the order finished bell, the old timer remembers the past and starts talking about James Thurston. What? I don't think miners are trained to talk about their grandfathers whenever a bell rings. If Frank gets the order wrong, the waitress yells at him and distracts everyone, and that part makes more sense. Just kind of a weird premise, but still a nice challenge. The old timer goes off topic and he talks about random things, which is mildly amusing. He talks for so long, you have plenty of time to finish the burger before he's finished talking, and that's nice. I do enjoy this challenge. Weird but fun, that's how I would describe it. When you're done, you get a long clue about the gemstones. The clue is 20 seconds long, and it gets repeated twice in a row. I don't know why! Once would have been more than enough, especially since this comes directly after a segment where an old timer is giving long speeches. Frank shows Nancy a letter from Samuel Clemens to Jake. This is the second thing to indicate Jake has famous pen pals. It's followed by a little joke that Joe has no idea Samuel Clemens is Mark Twain. The joke is not explained in the game, though, so if you don't already know Mark Twain was a pen name, the entire thing makes no sense to you. Now that you've got all the items, you want to put everything into place in the machine room. I like the gems puzzle. It's tricky how hand from the deep could refer to the octopus tentacle or the starfish, but actually it's the fish fin. Foul mouth, fixed on a star, and foot of the mirror are pretty straightforward clues. They make up half the puzzle. When you start the machine, the pickaxe breaks, so you're forced to get duct tape from John. It's inside a puzzle box. The puzzle is to click on the 9 pictures in order, the animal starred on the left shore. I don't like this puzzle. There's something about it bothers me. I look up the solution every time I play it. Use the duct tape on the pickaxe and you start the machine. If you did it right, you get an awesome looking cutscene that reveals the mine is in Brimstone Canyon. Nancy tells Lori, who insists that Nancy gets a 10-minute head start exploring the mine. Lori briefly channels the villain Jafar from Aladdin. She warns Nancy she would be in serious trouble if she tries to take anything from inside the cave. The final segment of the game is Nancy at the mine. This is another thing that makes the game seem huge. It has a very large area just for the endgame challenge, similar to Secret of Shadow Ranch in that respect. Exploring the big mine is interesting, and the game practically encourages you to explore it in order to find all those symbols. To open the mine, you have to set off a cannon. Awesome! You have to click the 6 metal things in the proper order. The order is random. It's basically the same puzzle as opening the door to Lori's caboose. The puzzle works. I wish it was at least slightly different from one earlier on in the game. In the mine, Jake's color wheel guides Nancy. It points to the color of glowing lizards on the wall. I have no idea how this invention works. Anyway, following the colored lizards leads you to a bunch of boards. You need to knock them down in order. You can either go back through the mine to find the correct order, or start knocking down boards randomly. I believe the second chance feature saves at every step of the puzzle. So for example, if you knock down the first 2 boards and then you get a game over, you restart with the first 2 boards already knocked down. So you can power your way through this puzzle by trying every single board over and over and over again until you find the right ones. That's a lot of game overs though. The puzzle ends when there are 4 boards left. Nancy can pass through the area to see Jake's skeleton. Jake died with a picture of Camille and a letter from President Abraham Lincoln. The letter is worth a fortune because it was written on the day Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. I am amazed Nancy has that date memorized. She must be a great student in history classes. Lori shows up. She reveals she knew about the letter all along. Jake mentioned it in his personal diary. Dang it, Lori, why didn't you give Nancy that diary? You could have saved her so much puzzle solving. Nancy gives the letter to Lori, and Lori is happy they're going to be famous. Good famous for once. But Lori thinks she'd be even more famous if she found the letter all by herself. She gives Nancy a nasty look as she realizes she can't trust Nancy to lie about this. Yes, Lori gets angry at Nancy for being an honest person. Some bats cry out while Lori is glaring at Nancy, and it is the closest Lori comes to being sinister in this culprit confrontation. The rest of the time, Lori is more ditzy than evil. Oh my gosh, what if I killed you? I'd be so famous! I rather like this. I know we had a similar surprise culprit in Curse of Blackmore Manor, but I still think it's a big change of pace to have a non-evil culprit who did nothing wrong before this moment. She never planned to hurt anyone, and she has no interest in getting the treasure so she can sell it for money. All she really wants is for people to genuinely like her, and that's a very different motive for a culprit in these games. Usually, the culprit is a bad guy who's purposely hurting other people in order to get money and or revenge. Nancy's kind of slow to understand that Lori's talking about killing her. It's Hard to believe that Nancy is momentarily outsmarted by Laurie Gerard. Laurie apologizes because she doesn't want to kill Nancy, she just wants people to respect her. That line hit me like a slap to the face. I think it adds real depth to Laurie's character. She's not just a shallow airhead who only cares about publicity, she's also a sad person who's weighed down by the fact that no one takes her seriously. That one line about respect makes me feel bad for Laurie because her life must be terrible when everyone in the country thinks she's a worthless idiot. But the solution to that problem is not murder, it's to do something that's actually worthwhile, Laurie. So I think Laurie's a great culprit. I think Tino would also have been a good culprit, but I'm kind of glad they took a chance and made Laurie the main villain. Laurie causes a cave-in, but luckily Nancy isn't hurt. She turns around and sees a minecart, which leads outside. How convenient. The minecart challenge goes on for over a minute, and it's fairly interesting to watch. They certainly put a lot of effort into making a large endgame sequence. At 5 places, there's a fork in the road. You have to click on the path, which is not marked with a death sign. You get plenty of time to make the right choice. The minecart takes Nancy outside, where she knocks Laurie into a mud pit, just as the Hardy Boys arrive. They recover the letter, and Laurie's furious at you, although she's not so furious that she remembers your name. In the end, Laurie's dad cuts off her allowance. Now she has to get a job and work for a living, and she won't stop crying about it. I like how Laurie is still wearing the muddy clothes in the ending, like she didn't have any chance to change in the multi-day train ride back home. Tino tries to steal the credit for solving the mystery, but the press gets distracted when John and Charlena get into a big fight. I wonder what prompted that argument. That's the end of the game. Overall, I think it's a fantastic game without any major problems, although there are certainly some minor things that could be improved. I mentioned them. But I do not hesitate to say that this game is one of my favorites. I really like it. I give Nancy Drew number 13, Last Train to Blue Moon Canyon, a 10 out of 10.